to say more than rearming Hinduism, we need to disarm Abrahamic religions if Hinduism is to survive. What do I mean by disarming? I mean legally disarming. Because let's be very honest about it. There is no other way. I am not advocating any other way. But you are seeing that there are religions that hold sacrosanct as one of their principal dogmas as to convert others, to bring others into their fold. That is an axiom in them. In fact, you are rewarded heaven if you convert someone and bring that person into their fold. And if you have such philosophies within a society, how can logically Hinduism survive? It's almost impossible because the rewards on the other side are just too many. And we've seen how coercions, forced conversions have led to vast swathes of Indian lands, territory, peoples being converted. And the next stage obviously is, as we know, multiple examples that the person who's converted is more vociferous in proclaiming his newly adopted religion than even the people who have been through generations belonging to that religion or that dogma. So there is no way out. As the most prominent example, Allama Iqbal, the poet who was supposedly called the ideological father of Pakistan, his grandfather was a Kashmiri Pandit. And who would have thought that it would take 1.5 generations for someone to be so vocal, an absolute religious bigot in the sense that he said, I have a sole purpose on this earth, which is to defeat infidelity and break all idols. And that is the whole sole purpose of Islam. I mean, these are his words. He was the one, in fact, who was the pallbearer of Ilmuddin, the one who killed the publisher of Rangila Rasool. And these are the people we celebrate. There are awards on Allama Iqbal in India. In Pakistan, of course, there would be. But in India, there are awards on Allama Iqbal. In fact, the word Allama itself should not be used because that is in reverence to this guy. So what other things does one require? I think the most prominent one is legal. You have to be absolutely certain that Hinduism cannot survive if you carry on with this process of turning a blind eye to illegal conversions. We've seen it in the South. We've seen it in Punjab, of all places. No one seems to be acting on this. But more important than that, how are we rearming Abrahamic religions? And I don't want to go back to the book that I've written, but I think it's fairly clear that if you keep on discriminating against Hindu places of worship, Hindus, their ways of rites and beliefs, and keep on looking the other way, not just that, keep on appeasing the people who belong to other faiths, you are in fact disarming Hindus and rearming legally the other faiths that even Rabindranath Tagore said 150 odd years ago, 130 odd years ago, that if there are two religions in this world that are intent upon destroying every other religion, and they are Christianity and Islam. And he also said the only way to, I might be paraphrasing, but he said the only way to make peace with them is to embrace them. So he was also, sorry to sound despondent because Sai is obviously here. But the fact is there is no way out. I'm being very honest about it. Sooner or later, I doubt with the policies we have, I doubt Hinduism is going to survive. The fact that you are in exile 33 years, 34 years after 700,000, 500,000 of you then were driven out. Hindus driven out of lands that belongs to Hindus. And no government cutting across party line has done anything. I'm seeing you, it is in one sense a pleasure, but in other sense, it's really painful. I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know of any large country, Vamsi, where people, the majority are refugees in their own land. I mean, do you find Germans as refugees in Germany, Brits as refugees in Britain? But there are 700,000 Hindus, majority population of India as refugees in this country. Where did we go wrong? How difficult could it be? And we've reached a stage now where when a person repeats what the Accountant General said in 2019 of a model to rehabilitate safely and securely 700,000 Kashmiri Hindus victims of genocide, that people are interpreting today as a call for genocide. It is so bizarre. You feel, as Christopher Hitchens said, for how long will we keep on answering things and keep adjusting to the views of the fanatics? Because they are intent upon misinterpreting you, and they will do so. They are intent upon looking for provocation in whatever you say. It is degrading. It is embarrassing to adjust to them. But what is the alternative when people think like that? We possibly wait for death to rid us of our remembrances. I think that is what it is. We are intent upon telling Kashmiri Hindus, wait till age gets you and, maybe then you would be at peace. There is no other way to reconcile with this, what has happened. 7 lakh refugees in this. Couple of other points about Hindutva especially. We live in a country where we have laws, for example, Section 295A, that prosecutes and arrests people for offending religious sensibilities, and this is always subjective. What is offense, what is not? For example, what Udaynidhi Stalin said, wanting to eradicate Sanatan Dharma, and he's still roaming free. Whereas one 20-year-old, I think, boy from Maharashtra who advocated people not to go to Ajmer Dargah, he was thrown in jail because he offended the religious sensibilities of Muslims. And no newspaper or media covered it. They covered it only after he emerged from jail after 45 days. This is the country. And even though the Supreme Court judgment says that the state police must take immediate action if somebody offends religious sensibilities, file an FIR, file a case. Tamil Nadu, obviously, police did not file a case against Udaynidhi Stalin. So this is a subjective matter. Can we say things or abuse Islam like the way we abuse Hindutva? If we do, we'll be thrown in jail. We know that. So why do Hindus accept when the left and the Islamists and the non-Hindus abuse this word or this philosophy, Hindutva, rampantly? They do it because they actually mean to abuse Hindus or Hinduism, but if they do so, they run the risk of offending religious sensibilities. So they've found this nice kind of detour that they will, whatever abuse they want to shower on Hinduism, they use the word Hindutva. But besides the fact that there is a 1995 Supreme Court judgment where the Chief Justice at that point of time was hailed as the panacea of liberalism, Justice Verma, says Hindutva is the essence of Hinduism. It is what Hinduism is. And that judgment was based on the teachings of a lot of other Hindu philosophers as well, Radhakrishnan, yes, being one, Ramakrishna, Paramhans being another. So I want to ask, as a free speech absolutist, I don't want 295 to be there. But in the time it is there, why are people prosecuted for abusing Islam, but not abusing Hindutva? Especially when I have thrown this a challenge. Name me 5 things for people who deride Hindutva. Name me 5 things that are there in Hindutva that aren't already there in Islam. 5. Just 5. Open challenge. And if you can't, will you deride Islam as much as you deride Hindutva? No one has been able to answer this. So it is clear the hate towards Hindutva is essentially a hate towards Hindus and Hinduism. They've just found this stopgap, and our government, our lawyers, our judges are absolutely quiet about it. I think a lot of this Hindu phobia would end if this fork that has been provided to these bigots is realized, first of all, by the Supreme Court. But then when the Supreme Court stays silent when Udaynidhi Stalin abuses Hinduism, why would it speak out when somebody abuses Hindutva? When you are perpetually asked to rise up as a people's movement, to take back what is wrong, to fight for your rights, there's only so much people can do because we're all working, we're all doing our jobs. This is not our job. The job of the people is to elect an entity that promises to correct injustices. We are not, a billion of us are not judges. A billion of us are not policy makers. When our governments don't correct those, when our governments keep on rearming religions that are out to destroy Hinduism. Just yesterday, I don't know how correct this news is, that the Maharashtra BJP coalition government has provided 20 crores to the Waqf board, 10 crores to the Waqf board. What's going on out here? You have the minority ministry under the BJP in the last 10 years. First of all, why on earth should this minority ministry exist? But it does. And it offers interest-free loans to anyone who wants to set up a shop on Waqf land. Now, would they be Hindus who would set up shops on Waqf land? They are provided interest-free loans. You have RTE, Right to Education, that is working in conjunction with the 93rd Amendment that puts the onus only on Hindu-run schools to offer 25% reservation for the economically weaker sections. The minority-run schools do not have to obey to that diktat. This is not, no one is asking for appeasement. People are asking to remove the discrimination that is happening against Hindus and Hinduism. I'm not even going to Hindu temples. I'm not going to Places of Worship Act. I'm not going to the draconian nature of many legislations or the Waqf Act. I'm just talking about these are commonsensical, plain, logical, and rational discriminations that are happening. And if for the last 10 years you're not able to remove them, do you plan with massive majority? You plan to remove them with a coalition government?
Thank you, Anand. Now that you've entered this territory, this uncomfortable territory of Kashmir, and you mentioned that when you say disarm, it's about legal disarming. But I don't think that in the context of Kashmir, it would be out of place to say that actual disarming also needs to be done. Because clearly there's a lot happening on the ground. Although the media and all the news surrounding Kashmir of late, especially after the removal of Article 370, has almost been relayed through rose-tinted glasses almost. So everything seems to be hunky-dory, tourism numbers rising, and all kinds of happy figures. But then small things like small but very, very significant things like what happened last week, and all they need to do is just just target one person, and all that the narrative of everything being back to normal and we are ready for the world coming to Kashmir, all that bubble gets punctured immediately. So yeah, I mean, very, very pertinent points, very poignant what you said. Coming to you, Sai, I think what Anand just spoke about is almost loaded with so many questions for you, because he was very specific about disarming the othered, so to say. And that disarming, in the past, we've had so many conversations, even on camera, where you've mentioned that, you're not such a big fan of, let's say the UCC, for example, more geared towards disarming rather than rearming, right? So what is your position now after all these years and, having studied and having written 2 books in the meantime?
First of all, Jai Shri Ram. My analysis is that Savarkar resides in our lips, Gandhi in our spine, and Marx in our soul. Savarkar resides on our lips, Gandhi in our spine, and Karl Marx in our soul. Because the rule of keep left has not changed. I genuinely believe that the end result of the last 10 years is the utter success of the left. They've successfully proven that even the ones who call themselves on the non-left use Savarkar exclusively for lip service, while having the will of Gandhi in dealing with jihadi terrorism, and while constantly pushing Marx in every realm of our social sphere, specifically in education and history. That has not changed.
So Savarkar
on the lips, Gandhi in the spine, and Marx in the soul. So I say this for very clear reasons, and I'm not saying this because this is wordplay at play. The existence of a right is, first of all, the biggest possible myth in this country. It does not exist. It does not exist whatsoever. It exists in breach, not in default. It exists in the proviso, not in the section, to put it in the lawyer's language. And it's a minuscule proviso which exists in enclaves and islands, not in the mainland. I'm going to be thrown 2 specific initiatives, or 2 specific projects, the Ram Mandir and 370. This is what people are going to tell me. I will repeat this for abundant public consumption. Ram Mandir was well on its way even before 2014. Because the verdict of the Allahabad High Court came when no Hindutva party was in power either at the state or in the center. Because the evidence was so irrefutable, and most importantly, the determination of that case, let's say of the proponents of the case from the Hindu side. Come on, they fought the entire system when the BJP was not a political force to reckon with. They've been doing this for decades and centuries, for God's sakes. So the construction of the Ram Mandir, yes. But the verdict in itself, somebody else must take credit for it. The people who actually worked for it. And it's not just about the lawyers. All the groups that came together to make it possible. 370 in itself was never the goal. It was only a means to an end. Are we anywhere close to reaching that end? Is it even remotely in sight? I'm completely with Anand when he says that how much can you expect the society to constantly wake up when it knows that it does not have leaders? Because even in cultural spheres, you need the Pareto principle at work where you have cultural leadership being provided, thought leadership being provided. Every societal structure of the Hindu system and the Hindu way of life that was meant to provide cultural leadership was systematically destroyed by the independent Indian state by taking forward the colonial policy. Then the entire society has been rendered subservient to the state and to organizations without having their own means to protect themselves in any way, economically, socially, politically, or for that matter, even physically. So at this point, I'm genuinely hoping that out of sheer compulsion, the society will look inward. When I said this from 2014 to 2024, I was being told on social media constantly that this guy has no better thing to do than to constantly criticize those in power. Because I said, okay, let time prove me right. It's not as if I want to be proven right. If I'm wrong, the society benefits. If I'm right, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate if I'm right. Because it doesn't help me in any way. It endangers my family, it endangers my children, it endangers my extended relatives and my well-wishers, just as it endangers every other Hindu. So there is no vested interest or a dog in the race to be proven right, because then I'm investing in my ego as opposed to my own safety and the cause. And the worst part is that we are constantly waiting to celebrate every ephemeral triumph as opposed to looking for long-term policy outcomes. All other detractors or all detractors of the Hindu society invest in policy, and politics for them is a medium for policy, whereas we simply invest in politics without looking at policy. And the educated lot is more in the Hindu society, and uske baad bhi yahi halat hai. I'm blaming both parties, by the way. However, I will make the very clear statement that as long as this facade of normalcy continues, we will be outnumbered in our sleep, in our slumber. We'll be outflanked in our slumber. 3 back-to-back incidents in a place where supposedly 370 has been revoked, and not even in the valley, in Jammu.
4, I think.
Yes, and I'm so sorry for saying this, but I told you so is coming to my mind for a very good reason. 2017, when I delivered a lecture, thanks to Sangam talks, on the question of Rohingya illegal migration, one of the first things I pointed out was they're encircling the cantonment of Jammu. How is it that people who come all the way from Burma manage to settle exclusively in Jammu? 2017, we said this. Previously, you had only Bangladeshis to contend with. Now you have to deal with Rohingyas as well. And history says both of them come from the same stock. This is no more academic. I completely agree with Vamsi Garu that rearming Hinduism is necessary, but I'm going in a slightly literal sense. And I'm making the very clear statement that can anybody accuse us or anybody of us in the last 10 years of not having disseminated enough knowledge for people to awaken? What do you think we've been doing? How many lectures have been spent crying horse on the subject? Your survival as a community doesn't matter. Your survival as an individual is the only thing that seems to matter. I'm consciously going to watch the next 5 years for multiple reasons, because I genuinely believe against the deepest of my, let's say, nature. I'm an optimist to the core, but I'm genuinely going to watch the next 5 years for 2 or 3 things. The demographic inversion is reaching a tipping point in certain sensitive areas. I've never been a fan of cricket, Ashish. Never. Unless it's Pakistan on the other side, that's a different issue altogether. But even then, I find it absolutely absurd for us to invest in that sporting event thinking that they're fighting some kind of a war against Pakistan, because it's not the case. The kind of relationships that they enjoy with each other outside of the game and outside the ground is very different. The rest of us are just idiots to think that there is some kind of a war going on there. I am of the view that, okay, us din cricket chal raha tha, you didn't know, news was still pouring in, so you didn't know. What happened thereafter? How many people reacted to it? How many people expected hard answers from the government? How many people posed uncomfortable questions to the government and saying, what exactly is happening there? We need a census as quickly as possible. Until and unless we have the numbers, we are being led down a dark path with music being played and with garland around us. And that can only lead to Bali ka Bakra from there. The jihadi thrives in peacetime, because that time is spent in preparation. Whereas that time is spent by Hindus in celebration. And when suddenly you're caught unawares, you have no response mechanisms whatsoever. I certainly believe that there are some aspects of our problems and challenges that can be addressed legally. But law requires political will to be its starting point. The ball is set rolling by political will. Political will is made possible by political incentive or disincentive. As someone who also leads a regular professional life, I'm saying that Hindus are in that unfortunate position where they have no other option but to constantly scream and add their expectations. So in the interest of self-preservation, what are the options and cards on the table that you're actually left with? Almost nothing. Because the reality also is, what are the political options otherwise? Horrendous. If the elections of 2024 proved anything, you really have nobody else to choose from. What a pathetic situation for the largest democracy in the world. So the reality check that the verdict has given to both sides with respect to their respective positions is, according to me, the only silver lining of the outcome of 2024. Most of us remember how 2004 felt. So we should have been relieved that 2024 was not a 2004. But we are actually hoping that this would be a tipping point of sorts, because now is the time that the society also gets to stand up and make itself. So everybody has to go through an internal chintan and manthan in the language that they love to use. I am at this point positively jaded with these discussions. I have no more patience for them because I don't see the point of it. I'm just hoping that the actual works which will stand the test of time and posterity, such as these, will be constantly produced in the hope that the young generation that is consuming it will draw the right lessons, as opposed to reading pamphlets and propaganda documents. Because the hope is that we actually hold the mirror and speak truth to whoever is in power and say, sorry, our issues are yet to be addressed. When people said Kashmiri Pandit कर क्या रहे थे, वहां से उन्होंने पलायन कैसे किया, वो पलायन नहीं कर रहे थे, उनको वहां से भगाया गया. And don't ever point fingers at the Kashmiri Pandit community ever, because the rest of us are a macrocosmic representation of the Kashmiri Pandit community. It's only a matter of time and it's only a matter of happenstance that we are still not IDPs, internally displaced persons. And according to me, वो कार्य भी प्रगति में है, thanks to demographic inversion in multiple places. If Delhi is not safe, tell me which part of the country is safe. So, perhaps my only suggestion to all the youngsters sitting here, with the deepest of humility and with no intention to cause offense, हमारे साथ सेल्फी लेना बंद कीजिए, उससे कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. Just focus on ensuring that you ask the tough questions from the people who are in power. Don't get blown away and don't get carried away by propaganda from either sides. Hindus have to stand aloof, regardless of who they elect, and still continue to push their deliverables. That is the only bottom line. That's the only way you get the job done. And when I say Hindus, I mean those who are all practicing Hindus, regardless of their jati, because I'm constantly accused of something else. So I might as well say this very clearly. As long as the person who is dying is a practicing Hindu, my heart will bleed for the person, regardless of the jati. My position on the subject may be nuanced, may be slightly difficult, or even calibrated for people to agree with. That's a different issue. But when it comes to a matter of life, livelihood, dignity, and protection, I am on the same page as Savarkar. I am on the same page as all the people who stood for Hindu lives, livelihood, and dignity. There is no difference whatsoever. For me, the means don't matter anymore. The ends matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sai. I think we'll open it up for audience question and answers.
Namaskar to everyone. This is Apratim Tripathi. My question is not directed at anyone specific here, but I would like to set the context by quoting a tweet from Mr. Sai Deepak. In the interest of making their law-abiding lives livable in an increasingly hostile environment, it would help to keep at a distance the newly minted alleged Hindutva-vadi social justice warriors who push leftist anti-dharmic stereotypes under the garb of Hindutva using Savarkar. With that in mind, I have two questions related to Savarkar's Hindutva, because we know there are certain definition problems. So, although it may be a misunderstanding, one of the byproducts of Savarkar's Hindutva has been the promotion of a neo-atheist idea, or what I perceive as an anything goes idea of Hinduism, which is contrary to ritualism and Devupasana. How much does this impact, or say harm, the essence of being a Hindu, and of course, Hindutva itself? Brilliant. Second part. Savarkar also advocated for the annihilation of caste, a stance he pursued vigorously in the aftermath of the Khilafat movement. He saw this as essential for protecting Hindus and organizing them into a Sangathan. How do you view this perspective? Also, it would be really insightful if all of you could discuss on this, including Ashish, sir. Thank you.
That's why when I closed my opening remarks, I said that I stand with him on the question of protection of everyone. And I prefaced it by saying that when it comes to Hindu institutions and Hindu Jeevan Pranali, my position is obviously calibrated. The attack on Varnashrama Dharma, according to me, is the direct product. And according to me, that is the textbook instance of the success of leftist propaganda across the country. I will stand by the very clear statement that caste hatred, caste supremacism have no place. They never did. They should never have any place whatsoever. Be that as it may, Varnashrama Dharma certainly has purchased when it comes to some of our traditional institutions. Those who do not wish to subscribe to the values of those traditional institutions are under no fatwa-esque obligations to do so. You have been provided alternatives to it. From the Gayatri Parivar to every other organization that believes in disseminating the knowledge of the Vedas freely to everyone regardless of jati, there is no restriction whatsoever. The ones who wish to subscribe to those notions must equally have the freedom to do so because the Constitution permits it under Article 26. So the question that I would want to ask is, since the ones who constantly speak on the subject quote Dr. Ambedkar, did he put in a provision in the Constitution asking for destruction of caste as a structure or jati as a structure or varna as a structure, despite having written a book on the subject? For whatever reason, whether he wanted to do so to preserve reservations for a certain group of people, that's a different issue altogether, but he chose not to do so, right? I am of the very clear view that I'm using the position of Savarkar only for the purposes of protection from the outsider. But how this system will conduct itself within itself, there is significant diversity for everyone. You want to follow the Arya Samaji route, you have the freedom to do so. The problem arises when you're basically saying that traditional Vedic institutions must subscribe to and stand by the values of Arya Samaj or Gayatri Parivar or anybody else. We are saying to each his own. These are institutions that are run by Shastras, these are institutions that are run by Smritis, these are institutions that are run by Puranas, these are institutions that are run by Sthala Puranas. Allow them to do what they want to do. Which means, assume for a moment, let's take the same Sabarimala example and take it forward. If you choose to construct a newly minted Ayyappa temple in any part of this country, and you choose that the rules of this temple will be very different from the rules of the actual Ayyappa temple, can anybody stop you from doing so? But that institution is the epicenter, and that institution will live by the book that has consecrated it or that governs its practice. Right? Let's assume for a moment you set up a new temple altogether in every street, wherever you want to. And you say, sorry, here Varnashrama Dharma will not reign at all. And we will choose to appoint somebody else as the priest because we believe that he's trained, he's good enough, his character, we want him. Who can stop you? Who will stop you? Legally, you can't be stopped. Shastrically, you can't be stopped. That's for you to decide. But what is it that you're constantly trying to do? Is that you're constantly trying to foist your notions on that group which is today a minority. That institution which is a minority. And the fact of the matter is, these are the only institutions that have managed to withstand the test of time when it comes to preserving the spiritual aura of that place. That is why people still go to these places of all the institutions that have been built across the centuries. These are the institutions everybody gravitates to. That is why when I use the word decolonization, I'm saying you have chosen to look at your own history with such an absolute loathsome vision that you don't even want to understand what it speaks of. You don't even want to understand what is its position when it comes to an Advaita philosophy, what is its position when it comes to Vyavaharik philosophy, when it comes to certain places. We don't want to strike the distinction at all whatsoever. So I am very clear that when you choose to use the very same stereotypes that were minted in the crucible of the missionary and the Marxist, and you use that under the social justice label, under the label of reform, to start attacking these institutions, you're not doing any service to Hindutva. And in fact, if I may say so, I say this bluntly, Savarkar would have disagreed with you because you quote Savarkar when it comes to beef consumption. Savarkar never said that. Savarkar simply said, please learn to protect people as much as you protect cows. That was his position. He did not actively say that I will hurt the sentiments of Hindus by actually putting out pictures of beef consumption. You want to eat it? I'm sorry to say, I don't agree with it, but the choice is yours. I can't do anything beyond that, unfortunately so. But do you want to really hurt people's sentiments by doing this? I'm sorry, then how are you any different from Burhan Wani? You're not. Please understand this. Hinduism is calibrated and diverse. It doesn't follow the one-size-fits-all template of other religions. I am not saying dehumanize people. The problem is from here, the jump will be, there Sai Deepak supports untouchability. That will be the jump from there. That will be the jump from there. Everyone who resorts to this mischievous reduction is not a friend of a Hindu. And I say this bluntly today, I'm not going to hold my punches back. You want a textbook example of what happens when you start making the Brahmin the hate figure, and from there the jump to the church is not too far. Take a look at Punjab. Take a look at Punjab. They first decided to vilify the Brahmin in the name of newly minted versions of Khalistanism under the British period. From there, they gradually moved towards anti-Hinduism because the jump from there is not much. After that, how far do you think is the jump from there to the church or Islam? Throw in drugs, it's over. And you're losing a crucial battleground border state. So I'm very clear. Keep attacking the Vedic core of the Hindu philosophy in whatever name, under whatever rubric, under whatever umbrella. You're paving the way for anti-Hinduism at some point or the other. Two more examples. Tamil Nadu. Parts of coastal Andhra. Kerala. The jump is not far. Stop vilifying people. You can't say that I'm going to unify Hinduism by making one group the punching bag of your positions constantly in the hope that it will unify people by creating a hate figure within. You don't have the guts to create a hate figure outside, therefore you're constantly creating a hate figure within. If you had the guts to create a hate figure outside, you would identify the true culprit outside. You don't want to do that because today you're willing to co-opt the jihadi but alienate the Brahmin. That is a conscious choice that some people have made within the Hindutva fold. That is the conscious choice they've made, that we will isolate these groups because we need to accommodate everybody else. What vision is this? So what is the message that you're sending to people who subscribe by the rules of the Veda? Answer the question first, because the Vedic Sanatana Dharma happens to be the core of Hindu Dharma for all practical purposes, the epicenter of this entire ocean that has been created. So what are you telling those institutions? Are you asking us to leave this country? If yes, how different are you from the Naxalwadi, or the Marxistwadi, or the Jihadi? This question needs to be answered. This is the most raging internal debate that needs to be addressed, because this virus has infected our ideology. And the discussion is not happening in the places where it has to happen, because people are taking pot shots sitting in their ivory towers, when the price is actually being paid by people on the ground. You are inciting people against each other on the ground. Go to parts of Uttar Pradesh. The biggest threat to Hinduism, especially in Uttar Pradesh, is going to come from Chandrasekhar Azad. You take it from me. You take it from me. It's going to come from that gentleman. And people sitting here will co-opt even him in the name of Hindu unity and alienate everybody else. Wait for this to happen. This is the direction in which we are hurtling at this point. In the process, you don't have what it takes to create knowledge. You have not preserved anything. You will destroy and spew and spit on everything that has been created for millennia. So my answer is very clear. My positions on this subject are not at loggerheads with Hindu dignity and Hindu unity. They are not. And if you constantly want to use untouchability as the touchstone for every position on Varnashrama Dharma, I'm sorry to say, you must be treated as an insider-outsider or a mole or a Trojan, which is even worse than the outsider.
Just like to add a few points, if I may, if we have the time, I think. Yeah, thank you. Just extending from what Sai said, and I'll come to the political part a little bit later. It always befuddles me why Hindus fight amongst each other for thousands of years. And I'll tell you why I'm at peace with if we lose everything, but that has a scientific perspective. Again, I'll come to that later, because we are completely insignificant specks here today, gone tomorrow, so it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that a person who fights with someone, a Hindu who fights with another Hindu because there is disagreement on caste, disagreement on a few other things that one person feels is wrong, that same person doesn't even think twice to have a Muslim friend who has never condemned the rank oppressiveness, the rank misogyny, patriarchy, othering, supremacist views that he espouses. It befuddles me. There it says, and I think Sai also mentioned a little bit, you are co-opting jihadis, he said, at the expense of your own. This is it. And I've talked to people who are in disagreement with a lot of people who now they have branded as espousing casteism, untouchable. I said, have you even read the religious dogma that you are friendly with people, with Muslims? Have they ever condemned it? They might not follow it, but have they ever condemned it? You demand from people who believe in, one system, condemn it, condemn this. Do you go around asking your Muslim friends, condemn this openly, publicly, privately, whatever? You don't. You accept them as they are and say, look, I am a Hindu, you're a Muslim, stay like that. Prime Minister Modi gave 75 interviews okay, in the last 3 months. He didn't give interviews to leftists, obviously, or to, those leftist rags and all those things. He gave it to people who he thought were on, quote unquote, again, our side. Right-wingers, anchors, whatever you may call it, okay? Did any of those anchors, any of those people and it also came out, all of them said none of those interviews were scripted. And I've talked to people in the government, and Narendra Modi did not say, or there was no prescribed thing that this question is to be asked, this and that. How is it that none of them asked, why are temples still under your control? How is it that none of right-wingers asked, why were you silent on Nupur? What was the signal you were giving? How is it that none of them asked them, why are you silent on Bengal? All those hundreds of Karyakartas who've died, who've been murdered. Why are you silent on Sabrimala when the Congress overturned a Supreme Court judgment to placate Muslims wrongly? The Shah Bano judgment was actually for the Muslim, it was towards reforming Muslim society, if not Islam, because that can't be, it's forbidden. The Congress overturned that judgment. Out here, the Sabrimala judgment was against perceived discrimination. It wasn't discrimination. How is it discrimination when in just one of the Ayappa temples, because the deity is celibate and requests that women of a certain age group who are menstruating not be allowed, in other Ayappa temples they're allowed. But the fact of the matter is that there are Hindu temples, I think 10 of them, where men are not allowed. So how is it discrimination if in some temples, one temple, women are not allowed? Is that discrimination? Why didn't Narendra Modi have the courage to at least talk about this? I'm fed up of being a votary of bottom-up approach. Absolutely fed up. If the person on the top is silent, I'm sorry, that's a calamity. And everything stems from there. When people saw that Nupur was not supported even by her own, the biggest signal was sent to these jihadis and Islamists. We can do anything and get away with it. So let us look inwards. And that inwards cannot happen if all of us are fighting over reasons where all of us are hypocritical. We are accepting, as you say, co-opting people who have such shocking views that the only thing more bizarre than that is homosexuals accepting Sharia law.